Imagine climbing a steep cobblestone street in rural Burgundy, a village of barely 500 souls, and arriving at a church so vast and so magnificent that it once rivaled Rome as a destination for pilgrims. For 2 centuries in the Middle Ages, this hilltop drew more faithful than almost any site in the Christian world. Kings launched crusades from its hillside, saints preached from its shadow, and at the heart of it all, a woman, Mary Magdalene, the first witness to the resurrection, whose presence here turned a quiet Benedictine monastery into one of the holiest places in medieval Europe. Today, that church still stands. The light still pours through its windows in ways its 12th century builders designed deliberately, and if you arrive on the right morning, you might still hear monks and nuns singing in the dawn. Welcome to Vézelay. Welcome to Walking Tour of France, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in France with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination, from ancient ruins and stunning gardens to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible country. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore France. You are standing at the base of Vézelay, looking up at a village that seems to grow out of the hillside itself. The main street, a long, gently curving lane paved with old stone, rises steadily before you, lined with honey-colored limestone houses, small artisan shops, and the occasional garden spilling over a low wall. This is the approach every pilgrim has made for the past 1,000 years, and as you begin to climb, you're joining a procession that stretches back to the Middle Ages. The hill itself has a name, the Eternal Hill, and the name is earned. Human settlement here goes back thousands of years, drawn, it's believed, by salt springs that made this ground valuable long before Christianity arrived. The Romans knew the place, Carolingian monks knew it too. But the story that turned this rocky hilltop into one of the great sacred sites of Europe began in the 9th century, when Benedictine brothers founded a monastery here and, crucially, claimed to possess the bones of Mary Magdalene. That claim, once Rome gave it its blessing, changed everything. Pilgrims began arriving, then more pilgrims, then nobles, kings, and emperors. By the 12th century, the crowds were so large that a chronicler wrote, and this has been remembered for 9 centuries, that all France seems to go to the solemnities of the Magdalene. Think about what that means. This small hilltop village in inland Burgundy pulling the entire population of a kingdom toward it. The sheer scale of medieval devotion is staggering, and as you climb higher up the main street, it starts to feel real. Halfway up, on your right, you'll find a low stone building that houses a visitor center. If it's your first time here, step in before you go to the Basilica. There's a short film about the history and architecture of the church, along with scale models that help you understand what you're about to see. You'll come out understanding the building more deeply than most visitors who simply walk in cold. Continuing up the hill, the lane narrows slightly and the buildings close in on either side. There's something almost theatrical about this approach. The basilica is deliberately hidden until you're nearly upon it, and then, suddenly, as the street opens into a wide terrace at the top, the full facade appears before you. Stop here and take it in. The west front you're looking at was heavily restored in the 19th century. We'll come back to that story. But even in its reconstructed form, it has a quiet authority. A single tower rises to the left, the North Tower, built in the 14th century in a Gothic style. The South Tower was never completed. Above the central doorway is a large tympanum, a carved stone panel over the entrance showing the Last Judgment. This is not the medieval original, which was destroyed during the French Revolution. What you see was completed in 1856 in a neo-Romanesque style, designed to evoke the great carvings still waiting for you inside. Christ sits at the center with arms extended, surrounded by the weighing of souls, the righteous ascending, the damned descending. It's a threshold image, a warning, and a welcome at once. Now step through the doorway into the narthex. The narthex is the large entrance vestibule, the zone between the secular world outside and the sacred space within. This one was built in the 1140s and is itself an architectural achievement. 3 bays, vaulted ceilings, great cruciform pillars carved with scenes from the Old Testament and the Gospels. Medieval pilgrims would have paused here sometimes for extended prayer and penance before entering the church. Monks and nuns still gather in this space today, and if you arrive early enough in the morning, around 6:30, 7 o'clock, you may find a small community of brothers and sisters from the local monastic community softly chanting lauds. It's one of the most extraordinary things you can experience in Vézelay, an ancient liturgy in an ancient space unchanged in its essential form for centuries. But before you pass through into the nave, stop in front of the central portal, the doorway directly ahead of you. Above it is the tympanum that art historians travel from around the world to see. This is the Pentecost tympanum, carved between 1120 and 1132, and it is considered one of the greatest examples of Romanesque sculpture in existence. At its center, Christ sits in glory, his body rendered in an extraordinary way, not stiff and frontal as you might expect from this period, but alive with movement. His robes seem to ripple and billow. His arms are outstretched with a kind of commanding energy, sending rays of divine light downward to the apostles arranged around him. The figures around Christ represent the peoples of the earth, all the nations the apostles are being sent to convert, and they include, astonishingly, figures with enormous ears, dog-headed men, people with their lips on their chests, beings from the edges of the known medieval world. It is a map of humanity as the 12th century imagined it, wrapped around a moment of cosmic significance. Stand here longer than you think you need to. The details keep revealing themselves. Now pass through into the nave and prepare for something remarkable. The first thing you'll notice is the light, and then the color. The nave at Vézelay was built with alternating pale stone and dark stone in its arches, creating a distinctive striped rhythm that runs the full length of the church. It gives the interior a warmth and visual complexity you don't find in most Romanesque buildings, where everything tends toward a uniform gray. The arches are round. This is Romanesque architecture at its most confident, and they repeat in a long, hypnotic procession that draws your eye straight toward the choir at the far end, which glows with a much brighter light. That contrast is intentional. The nave was completed around 1125. The choir was rebuilt later, in the years between 1170 and 1210, in an emerging Gothic style. Where the nave uses round arches and groin vaulting, the choir opens into pointed arches and a flood of natural light. Moving from one to the other, you cross from Romanesque to Gothic in a single walk, from one architectural era into another. And the shift is so deliberate it feels almost like a lesson. The light itself throughout the entire building was designed with extraordinary care. Twice a year, the builder's genius becomes visible to the naked eye. At noon on the summer solstice, or in the days just after, sunlight enters through precisely positioned upper windows and falls in 9 pools of light directly along the center line of the nave floor, creating a luminous path from the entrance toward the altar. At the winter solstice, 6 months later, the light shifts and falls instead on the upper capitals of the north arcade. The medieval builders calculated these effects deliberately, centuries before anyone had the mathematics we'd use today. If your visit happens to coincide with either solstice, count yourself extraordinarily lucky. As you walk slowly down the nave, let your eyes travel upward to the capitals, the carved stone blocks that crown each column. There are roughly 100 of them in the nave alone, and each one tells a different story. These are the illustrated books of the Middle Ages, visual narratives for a congregation that was largely unable to read. You'll find scenes from scripture, images from legend, figures from daily life, and occasionally something purely fanciful. Strange beasts, fantastical creatures, allegories carved with wit and skill. One of the most celebrated is known as the Mystic Mill, which shows Moses pouring grain into a millstone while an apostle catches the flour, an allegory of the Old Testament being transformed into the New. Take your time with these. You could spend an hour simply reading the walls. Near the crossing where the nave meets the transept, pause and look around at the full dimension of the space. This is a very large church for a village of this size, built to handle thousands of pilgrims, not a local congregation, and the scale still impresses. It was, at the height of its fame, one of the 4 great starting points for the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. Pilgrims would gather here, receive a blessing, and then set out on the long road south and west through France, over the Pyrenees, and across northern Spain. That route still exists. People still walk it today, and many of them still begin from Vézelay. Continue into the choir and let the Gothic light wash over you. The shift is immediate, brighter, airier, more vertical. The stone here is a lighter color too, amplifying the effect. At the center of the choir, beneath the altar, is a descending staircase that leads to the crypt, a quiet, ancient space dating to the 12th century, where a reliquary is kept that is believed to contain one of the bones of Mary Magdalene. The claim to possess her relics was disputed as far back as the 13th century, when another French church produced its own set of relics, and Pope Boniface VIII recognized those instead. Vézelay's importance gradually declined from that point. Pilgrims were slower to come, the town shrank, and by the early 19th century, the basilica was in serious danger of collapse. What saved it was a young architect named Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, who received his first major commission here in 1840. Over nearly 2 decades, he stabilized the structure, restored the sculptural program, rebuilt damaged sections, and brought the building back from the edge of ruin. He went on to restore Notre-Dame de Paris, the medieval city walls of Carcassonne, and the Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel. Vézelay, in a sense, was where he learned, and what he did here is considered one of the great achievements of 19th century architectural restoration, controversial in its methods, extraordinary in its results. If you have time, climb the stairs in the narthex to the tower terrace. The view from the top is sweeping. The valley of the Cure River below, the village of Saint-Pere visible to the south, the rolling green hills of the Morvan stretching to the horizon. This is the landscape that pilgrims have been arriving into for 1,000 years, and it's one of the most beautiful views in Burgundy. Before you leave, there's one more moment worth seeking out, and this one requires either luck or planning. The community of the Fraternities of Jerusalem, the brothers and sisters who maintain a monastic presence at Vézelay, sings the liturgy of the hours in the basilica or an adjacent chapel. If you're here early in the morning, you may be able to simply walk in, or check in advance at the Pilgrim Center near the top of the hill, where you can also register to receive a pilgrim's blessing. It takes less than 5 minutes and is a quietly moving thing, even for the non-religious. The gesture connects you to everyone who has stood in this place with their walking staff in their hand and a long road ahead. Now step back out into the terrace in front of the basilica, find a quiet spot at the edge, and just stand for a moment. Look out at the countryside below. Vézelay sits at the geographic center of France, more or less, and from this hilltop you can see for miles in every direction. Vineyards, forests, meadows, a river threading through the valley. For 1,000 years, this was a point of departure. Pilgrims came here to begin something, a long walk, a prayer, a transformation. Whatever brought you here today, the place has a way of making you feel the weight of all that coming and going, all those hopeful arrivals and difficult departures, spread out across the centuries behind you. When you're ready to eat, head back down the main street to find a table. For a meal with a view directly facing the basilica, Restaurant La Terrasse sits right at the top of the hill and serves straightforward French family cooking with terrace seating and an extraordinary backdrop. A few steps away, Le Cheval Blanc is the village's most established restaurant, known for a menu that blends traditional Burgundian cuisine with seasonal modern touches. Look for the ewes en merette, soft poached eggs in a rich red wine sauce, which are among the best in the region. Down at the base of the hill, Le Relais du Morvan is a traditional hotel restaurant with a terrace, famous locally for its grilled meats and convivial atmosphere. And if you're in the mood for wine and cheese rather than a full sit-down meal, Le Petit Vofi is a small bar with a warm welcome and an excellent selection of locally produced wines paired with regional cheeses. A perfect late afternoon stop. There's more to explore in the area beyond the basilica itself. The village of Saint-Pere, just down the hill to the south, has a remarkable Gothic church dating from the 13th century. A striking contrast in style to the Romanesque you've just spent the afternoon with, and the ruins of ancient Roman baths nearby. The fortified market town of Avallon, about 16 kilometers to the northeast, has an imposing medieval old town worth an afternoon of wandering, with ramparts, a clock tower, and several excellent restaurants. Just beyond Avallon lies the Morvan Regional Natural Park, a vast forested upland of lakes, rivers, hilltops, and hiking trails that sees a fraction of the visitors it deserves. If you have a day to spare and want to trade stone corridors for quiet forest paths, the Morvan is where to go. And for those following the thread of medieval religious architecture through Burgundy, the Cistercian Abbey of Fontenay, about an hour's drive to the east, is another UNESCO World Heritage Site. Austere and magnificent in equal measure, and as different from Vézelay as Romanesque is from Gothic. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination. Leave us a positive review to help others find the show. And share this episode with someone who loves exploring France. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond France, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next walk.